You are listening to the Disney Dream Girls, an unofficial Disney Theme Parks podcast, and this is show number 332 for Sunday the 13th of September 2020.
Where dreams begin.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's Disney Dream Girls. My name is Michelle Young, and together with my jolly good chum Jayne Phipps, we are your guides to the place where dreams begin. Well, on this week's show, I would like to welcome the wonderful Len Testa from the touringplans.com website. Hi, Len.
Girls, how are you?
Good.
Yes, good.
It's so lovely to speak to someone who's been basking in the beauty of Disney so much recently.
Oh, the last 3 months have been really good. So June, July, and August, I spent in the parks almost in the resorts anyway, almost every week.
Wow, and that's something you normally wouldn't do over the summer, am I right? Because you don't normally like the August weather of Florida.
Yeah, normally I'm not try not to go into the parks in the summer because it's just so humid, and it's so hot. And it was mind-meltingly hot every day that I was there. The humidity and the temperatures combined to make it pretty much miserable if you weren't actually in a theme park. The fact that I was in a theme park made it better, but it was still really hot.
I'm so jealous, though. You must have been able to do so much. So tell us, what's the best thing about going to Disney right now?
The best thing, all right, so it's food-based. The best thing is that there are nights when you're in a restaurant, when you're like maybe one of 3 to 5 parties in the restaurant. And Disney's still staffing the restaurant with, professional staff, chefs and servers. But the chefs now, instead of having to do, 200 meals a night, they're doing like 20 meals a night, which means that every dish that comes out of the kitchen is getting personal attention from the very best of Disney's chefs. And so the food is exquisite. It's never tasted so good. It's never been as fresh. Nothing sits under a heat lamp because your server only has 2 tables or 3 tables to tend to. So if something is ready, they'll bring it out as soon as the dish is done. And I've had some of the best meals that I've had in Disney World ever in the last couple of months. Yeah.
So tell me what some of those meals have been.
Oh, so I had this pork dish at it was pork medallions at the Wave for dinner one night, and it was something that the chef had just come up with as a special that night. So it wasn't on the menu, but I had taken the server's recommendation for a chicken soup that also wasn't on the menu, and that was fantastic. So based on her recommendation, she said, I think I wanted steak that night, and I actually said I wanted steak, and she said, you can have the filet. The filet is wonderful, but the chef is making pork medallions tonight in a plum glaze sauce, and it's really good. So I tried that, and it was just fantastic. It was with a cheddar cheese grits for a side, and all the flavors combined so well together. Everything was perfectly cooked. Everything was the exact right temperature. Nothing sat under a heat lamp. It was just amazing food. Also over at the Grand Floridian Cafe, they're doing a cornflake encrusted fried chicken breast that is, first of all, it's the size of the dinner plate. Like my first question to the server was, how did you catch the chicken? Like, if it's this big. Was it like a rodeo, like a lasso? What were you? But it's amazing. It's crunchy on the outside. It's tender and juicy on the inside. It is a massive piece of chicken breast, just delicious. And it comes with this one came with, I think, wilted spinach in a vinaigrette, but with bacon. So it was both tart from the vinaigrette and also savory from the bacon. Because if you're going to make vegetables appealing, ladies, you put bacon in them.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing.
Exactly, right? I mean this, but it was actually so good. I went back the next week, and they'd actually switched up the recipe just slightly and made it even better. And it's very rare for me to go to a restaurant twice in 2 weeks and order the exact same thing, but I did because it was so good. The meals we've been having there have just been absolutely fantastic.
And I imagine the service must have gone up a level because they got less covers going through, so the wait staff will be wanting to be overtly attentive to ensure that they do get the good tips.
It's true. So the waitstaff, the way that Disney brought back the waitstaff is on a seniority basis. So the people who are working in the restaurants now are the ones who have been there the longest and understand the restaurant operations the most. And that does get you into a little bit of trouble every once in a while, but most of the time it's really, really good. So where it gets you into trouble is this. On opening day, I had lunch at Be Our Guest in the Magic Kingdom. Mm-hmm. And our server that night had been at Crystal Palace, the buffet, which was no longer open, but because she had literally had the most seniority in the Magic Kingdom, food and beverage, they asked her if she wanted to work, and she said yes, and they put her at Be Our Guest. And that's fine, right? She definitely knows how restaurants in Walt Disney World work. The issue was, remember, the Crystal Palace is a buffet. Mm-hmm. So her job as a server was to seat you, to get your drink order, and to point you in the direction of the food, and that was it. Mm-hmm. But at Be Our Guest, you actually have to take orders for things like appetizers and entrees, and then ask how those entrees are supposed to be cooked, and then come back for dessert. So about 30 minutes after we placed our drink order, she came back and she said, "This is my first day back in 4 months or whatever, with the 3 months that it was closed. And I haven't taken an actual order in 40 years. What do you guys want for appetizers?"
Bless her.
Yeah, we're like, look, we were all laughing, like, look, we'll all get through this together. So that was really interesting. But yeah, so servers, I think, are getting used to it now. But like I said, overall, the food has just been excellent. And the crowds are super, super low too. At least not other than weekends, but like weekdays, it's a beautiful time to be in the parks.
Oh wow, sounds absolutely magical. So we are fans of the Disney food, so I'm glad you went in with the most important thing. But what about the ambience? Is it starting to sort of feel as special as it was? Because it must be you've spoken before about it's quite jarring having the COVID announcements going over the loudspeakers and things. Are you able to block that out and still feel that you're in a Disney bubble?
Yes. So the first day of the announcements, you tend to notice them, but I forgot about them. I stopped listening to them after the first week or so. The thing, even like the masks and the hand sanitizers, after you're there for like a day or so, it's all just part of the routine. Like it's not something that you even think about. Like I know over the last couple of weeks, I actually have special masks made that say Potato Land on them from the Mickey Mouse cartoons. So I pick up my Mickey Mouse masks and go to the parks, and it's just like everything else. The one thing that I catch every once in a while is I'll decide like at 11 o'clock that I want to go to the studios for lunch, and I'll forget to make a reservation, a park reservation, and that's the one thing that trips me up, because sometimes you can't actually get into a park because there aren't enough reservations. And that's the one thing that I find myself like, oh, I gotta remember to do that. Everything else, now it's just the new normal, and that's fine.
Are you finding the most difficult park to get into is Hollywood Studios then?
Oh yeah, by a wide margin. It's especially if you're an annual pass holder, the number of reservations for that is still relatively low, and that is the park that's going to sell out first, especially on weekends when more people are able to go to the parks.
And I'm assuming that's the knock-on effect of Galaxy's Edge.
It is still, and it's the desire for people to ride Rise of the Resistance and to be there early in the morning when the first set of boarding groups go out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neither of us have been to Walt Disney World's version, and we are eagerly anticipating to get there at some point. And I know you've detailed it on the show for us before, so we will talk a little bit more about Galaxy's Edge in a few moments, because we were wanting you to help out one of our listeners, the lovely Anthony Markham, because he has decided on a bit of a whim that he's going to go down at the end of September and have a 4-day extravaganza. He's been able to get Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, Epcot and Magic Kingdom in that order. And
wow.
He's done really well, hasn't he? I think that's amazing.
That's fantastic, especially Hollywood Studios on the Saturday. That's a tough reservation to get.
He's one of those people that he deserves to be able to go because he works in healthcare, so he's one of the most fabulous people in the world, and he has been keeping the good old people of North Carolina in fine fettle over the last few months, and he does deserve to go and have an absolutely exquisite trip. Hence, we have come to the font of all knowledge to help him get the best out of each of these parks and make the best of his time there.
Lou Mongello's on the show? When's it begin? Wow, that's fantastic. Oh, me. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay, I'm ready.
Oh, you made me giggle. You did. Yeah.
Compose yourself, Michelle.
All right, here we go.
I'm trying to compose myself, but it's like, okay, behave. Right, so Animal Kingdom is his first day. So have you any top tips that you could give to him to ensure that he gets the big hitters in?
Yep.
What about food there? What about anything in particular? Because obviously the park hours are decreasing and getting like the park will be at one point by January open for half an hour.
So the park's opening at 9 a.m., which is a little bit later than it's been opening, and I think it closes at 5 as well. But the good news is that's still enough time to see the park, as long as you're not anticipating hour-long breaks for lunch. Here's the interesting thing about Animal Kingdom. So pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, the strategy that a lot of people employed was to get to the park very, very early so that you could be in line first for Avatar Flight of Passage. Mm-hmm. And that's not the best strategy now for a couple of reasons. One, the park, especially the parking lot, is only opening about 30 minutes before the park itself, and the turnstiles are only opening about 15 minutes before the park is opening. And you'll still see a number of people who will go to Flight of Passage first, but we've tested this in August using side-by-side touring plans, trying to go to Flight of Passage first or last to see which one resulted in fewer waits in line or less waits in line. And it turns out that if you don't go to Flight of Passage first, we started in Dinoland and worked our way anti-clockwise, that was the most efficient way to see the park while minimizing your waits in line. And that was really interesting because by the time you get back to Flight of Passage, it's usually like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And by that time, most people have started leaving the park. In fact, by 3 o'clock, you can walk down several walkways in the Animal Kingdom and not see anyone else. It's usually that uncrowded, especially if there's a rainstorm in the afternoon. That will clear out even more people from the park. So my advice, if you really want to minimize your wait in line, is to go anti-clockwise starting in Dinoland, and you should be able to walk on Dinosaur and Everest, or have very minimal waits on Everest as well. And then I would also see, while you're there, the new bird show that's in the Up Theater. That's a fantastic new show. Have you guys seen it on YouTube?
Not the new version. I'm waiting to see it in person.
Okay. So the old version was, or the second version of it, was a combination story about a woman who's discovered a village in India that she really likes, and then it somehow mixed in Doug from Up and the Up characters. It's kind of a mess. This new version is centered almost entirely on the birds, and it's entertaining, it's fast-paced, and it's all about the birds and how interesting they are and their behaviors. So it's more educational, so it fits in more with the theme of Animal Kingdom. The time flies by. That's a joke. And it's really, really interesting. So I think this is actually the best version of that particular bird show. I would definitely see it too. The one tricky thing is, because you're going to be in Asia so early in the morning, the first showing, I believe, is at 10:15 of this show. You may have to double back from Africa to see it, depending on how your schedule is. So just check on that, Anthony, when you get there.
Okay. And my top tip is go to Kusafari Bakery and get yourself an elephant ear, because they are as big as an elephant ear, covered in chocolate, covered in sugar, messy, as big as your face. Love them.
And trust your top tip to be food related, Michelle.
Yeah, you gonna serve alcohol, love?
Oh, okay then, moving on.
So Dawa Bar wasn't open as of last week, but and then the Harambe Market also wasn't open. But if you're looking for lunch, I mean, Flame Tree Barbecue is still very, very good, and it's open.
It is. Is Satuli Canteen? Did I miss that?
Satuli Canteen is also open. It's the highest rated place in the park, and the good thing about that is it's very spacious. Even when they're doing social distancing in the parks, there's plenty of space for most people, even at lunchtime. And I would definitely recommend that. Also, mobile ordering is the way to go anywhere now in Walt Disney World. Make sure you download the app and do mobile ordering.
Awesome. And obviously, is Anthony going to be able to walk past Primeval Whirl and leave some flowers on its grave?
I don't think anyone misses that.
I liked it.
I was going to say, I like Primeval Whirl. Maybe it's a Brit thing, Michelle.
It could be, but it's in the UK. I remember going to Blackpool, and you've been to Blackpool, Len, so I know.
Love Blackpool.
And they have like a cat and mouse type thing. And I love the rickety tall structure of this because it is reminiscent of that. I love the fact that it spins around, very reminiscent of Crush's Coaster in DLP, which is my favourite attraction. It just didn't seem to fit. I think the story was like, oh, what rubbish can we sell as a story to make this ride that is just off the shelf fit?
It is, let's charitably say, lightly themed. And leave it at that, yeah.
Oh, bless. I love Animal Kingdom's Primeval World. So, Anthony, go leave flowers for me.
There you go.
Any other top tips for there, or shall we move on to day 2, the biggie at Hollywood Studios?
Well, I think the other thing I would say to Animal Kingdom is, if you wanted to arrive a little bit later too, you probably wouldn't have that much of an increase in waits. So if you wanted to sleep in for another half hour or an hour, you will have some waits. But again, between 3 o'clock and whenever it closes at 5 or 6, you could literally walk onto most rides. So
cool.
That's good to hear because, if he's been out having a couple of beverages the night before, it would be nice to be able to have a bit of shut-eye in the morning.
There you go.
You've already mentioned about the park not opening as earlier as it used to do with regards to pre-admittance. So what should he do with this one? Should he go to Galaxy's Edge first?
So there's a couple of things. The park is going to open at 10. They'll probably let people in around 9:30 or so. If Anthony's coming in on the Skyliner will be running in plenty of time to get into the park before opening. The thing that you want to do here is you want to have, in order to have the best chance of getting a boarding group for Rise of the Resistance, you need to be in a place in the park that either has very good and uncrowded Wi-Fi or where you have a decent cell phone signal with your cell phone carrier. For me, I like Animation Courtyard in the corner by the entrance to Disney Junior. We brought in network equipment to test the Wi-Fi speed. Of course we did at different points in the parks. And this area has both the strongest signal, the fastest response time on Disney's network, and the lowest rate of errors. So I would suggest standing in that area, maybe 5 minutes before 10 o'clock, having your Disney app, My Disney Experience app open in order to get that boarding group. And if it doesn't work at 10 o'clock, there's another drop at 2 p.m. as well. But Anthony's going on a Saturday. Saturdays have been the busiest days for Hollywood Studios. So I would say you don't want to be around a crowd. I think the place to get a boarding group is like I said, in Animation Courtyard there.
That's a very good top tip. Thank you for sharing that. But didn't security say anything to you with all this kit, with all this sort of like, I imagine, Len, you're sort of there with some sort of weird science type sort of colander on your head with antennae coming out of it.
It was a laptop and some things. They're looking for guns, really. I mean, and and bottles of alcohol. If they see a laptop, they don't care, and that was enough. The other thing you want to see, obviously in Hollywood Studios, is Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is a fantastic attraction. I forget that it's only been open a couple of months because it opened like the
Of
week
course.
before the parks shut down. But that is a ride that I will. It's like for me, it's like Haunted Mansion or Pirates of the Caribbean, where I will try and do it once or twice every time I'm in the park, just to go on it. The song is infectious. The animation is fantastic. The the humor in it, I think, is just classic Disney stuff. I think it's a great, great, great ride. And there's so many things to see, little visual gags and stuff throughout the ride. You can't get it all in one or two rides. So I would definitely see that. The thing there is once you could either try and sit in the line before the park opens and try and get your boarding pass then, or just wait it out and go in the afternoon when everyone is already leaving the parks. Runaway Railway is going to have one of the longest lines all day, but I think as you get closer to park closing, the lines do diminish a little bit. So that would be my advice there. Just sort of wait it out and do everything else instead.
Okay. He wasn't able to get a reservation for Olga's Canteen, so do you have any top tips on when would be the best time for him to try and snaffle an entry to it? Because he really does want to go and wait, and he doesn't mind the wait, but if you could say, morning's better than afternoon or whatever.
First thing in the morning or last thing in the afternoon. Again, the times that I've been there in the late afternoon, it wasn't walk up, but it was wait here 10 minutes and you can get in to Oga's Cantina. So the crowds again in the afternoon are much less than they would have been pre-pandemic. Going on a Saturday makes it a little bit trickier because the crowds will be higher, especially annual pass holders who will want to go. That's going to make it tricky there. The other thing I would say to Anthony is if he's going the 26th. If you wanted to build a lightsabers, Savi's workshop will be open on the 26th, so you can make a reservation for that as well. And they are taking reservations for that.
I think I'll just message him that and tell him.
Yeah.
I know he's busy building Lego at the moment, so I don't know if there's any room in his Star Wars room in his house to put any lightsabers, but you never know. He may be tempted.
I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, and I don't collect things, but I did the lightsaber experience in Disneyland on opening day, and I thought it was one of the best experiences that I've had in a Disney park. Like actually turning on the lightsaber and hear it make that sort of noise, the noise was really, really, it really got me into the whole land. That and the sporks that were there on opening day were two of my favorite memories of being in Disneyland when Galaxy's Edge opened.
Oh, how cool! Anything else?
Food is kind of tricky in Hollywood Studios right now because nothing's great there. ABC Commissary isn't open, or it's reopening, I think, soon, but only for lunch. I think Backlot Express is okay. My favorite place right now to eat is Docking Bay 7 in Galaxy's Edge. They do a vegetarian kefta there that I think is number one. It tastes like regular kefta, which I like. But I think it's one of the best meals that Disney serves in any counter service on site. So try Docking Bay 7 for lunch.
Awesome. And I've told him if he doesn't go into Starbucks and get a carrot cake cookie, I'm never going to speak to him again.
They're definitely offering those. I think one of our listeners had a question about that, and I actually went in and photographed it just to make sure that they were still offering it. So yeah, still there, right up front in the case.
Although he did say if there was any gingerbread, he would have to get gingerbread instead because he loves the gingerbread too. So I'm thinking end of September might be a bit early for your seasonal gingerbread. It might not be till after sort of the end of October.
Yeah, that might be a little early for that. But if it's going to be found, like I've always found gingerbread on Sunset Boulevard. So check there as well, Anthony.
Awesome. And I know we're using Anthony's name, but these travel tips can be used by anybody who will go into these parks, unless you want to change your name to Anthony for the day and just, pretend to be him.
If it's even better. Even better.
Okay, so we're off to Epcot and we've got a bit of a festival running as well, just to add a little bit of a spice to it.
Festivals all the time. The good thing about that is Disney's recently opened up some new booths for that. One of the ones that wasn't open was the Switzerland booth, which was cheese based. So raclette and a few other things. I guess no one wanted fondue when it was 100 degrees outside. Which, shocker. But yeah, I mean the major rides are running. So Soarin', Test Track, Frozen Ever After, Spaceship Earth, obviously never closed down. And the same thing applies there. You'll go through the entrance. The main entrance is the way to go. If you want to see Soarin' first. The same issues that have always plagued Test Track in the morning still happen. So you'll get there some mornings and it won't be running because of mechanical delays. So if you're going to head that way first, be sure and check with a cast member to make sure it's operating before you walk all the way over there. It'll save yourself some time. And the same traffic patterns sort of hold for Epcot as for Animal Kingdom and the studios. It's busy when the park opens. As you get later in the day, especially Future World becomes less and less crowded. You will see more people walking around the food and wine booths in the afternoon, and that's actually it's good to see that. The first week that Epcot was open, even with the food and wine booths, there were so few people in World Showcase that it felt uncomfortable. But now that crowds are building back up a little bit, it actually feels vibrant. Like it's one of those places where you can go in Walt Disney World and feel safe because everyone's following the rules and not walking around eating with their masks down. But also it feels more like normal Epcot should feel. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, it's good. I will say the booths are changing their food out pretty regularly. Japan, I know, has already switched menus once. The United States Pavilion has switched up its menu a little bit, and I like both of those places. I think the food in Japan and in the United States Pavilions are really, really good right now. So that's what I would recommend there. Also, the World Showplace Market, that area between the UK and Canada, has some really interesting desserts. Have you ladies seen those?
I haven't. No, can you tell us all about? We do. I can't get do out of my head now. We do.
Take a breath, Michelle. Take a breath.
It's been a long day.
Here we go.
I don't want to say do. It's been a long day. Yeah, we do desserts.
Is that all you were trying to say?
Yes. I'm sorry. It's been a very long day today. I'm sorry. Yeah, we do desserts. So please tell us, Len.
So the thing that they have there is a nitrogen dipped chocolate cake on a stick. And the chocolate cake comes three ways. So it's very good chocolate cake, and it's sizable, like the size of a baseball or a softball, on a stick, covered in chocolate. Mm-hmm. And then you could either get it just covered in chocolate, or you can get it with M&Ms or with toffee added. And then as soon as the chocolate is placed on the cake, the whole thing is dipped in liquid nitrogen to make a cold, hard shell. So when you bite into it, the shell is crispy and cold, but the cake is still warm cake. And it is delightful. For research purposes, I ate all three. And you would think that after the second one, you'd be tired of chocolate cake. And it's not true. I wasn't at all. It was that good. Each one of them was slightly different because of the additional toppings. You really have to eat it, though, as soon as it comes out of the liquid nitrogen. Because if you wait, 3 or 4 minutes, to get a photo or a selfie with it or whatever, the heat of Florida combined with the humidity will take away most of the cooling from the liquid nitrogen. So don't take the photo, just eat it, and it'll be the best experience. The other thing that they have at the marketplace is a mac and cheese booth with different variations on mac and cheese. Yeah, so if you're looking for a hearty dinner at a good price point, the mac and cheese booth is good. So they do a plain mac and cheese, but it's a really, really sort of dressed up cheese sauce on it. It's not the sort of the processed Velveeta that you would normally get in the United States. It's got garlic, I think cheddar and a couple of other cheeses in a blend. It's really, really good. They do a version with buffalo chicken, which gives it a little spice. And I really, really like that version. They do a third version with lobster that I didn't think was as good because I don't think the taste of lobster goes well with mac and cheese, unless there's something else involved. To me, it's sort of like it was sort of a fishy taste. But I think the plain version and then the version with buffalo chicken were both fantastic.
Sounds good to me. I like a bit of chicken, and I definitely like chocolate cake and a little bit of science being added to my food.
Yeah, it was. It's really entertaining to see the stuff being dipped in liquid nitrogen as well. So the person that's doing the cast member that's doing it is wearing safety goggles and these big rubber gloves, and there's got this giant metal container with smoke pouring out of it as the nitrogen evaporates. It's really a sight to see. That's where you should get your photos, not with the cake itself. So once the cake is out, just eat it.
Sounds absolutely perfect. Many eons ago we were going to talk about attractions at Epcot, but obviously the attractions are the food because there isn't a great deal of other things to do at the moment. Any top tips for enabling access onto things such as Test Track and Soaring?
So I think getting there in the morning and doing soaring first is probably best. I mentioned the tip about before you walk over to Test Track in the morning, asking a cast member to make sure that it's actually running. That's important as well. The lines for things like Frozen Ever After typically fall later in the day. So if you wanted to start a anti-clockwise tour of World Showcase starting in Canada, by the time you get to Norway in the evening, it should be a relatively small line. And I do expect, probably not in September, maybe October or November, I think Ratatouille may open. We'll see what happens.
Oh, that is such an amazing attraction. We're very blessed to have ridden it in Paris. So
very cool.
So excited for that.
Yeah, I think this year, but and the ride will be ready this year. Whether it opens is a second question, but possibly so.
Wonderful.
Fingers crossed.
Okay. Well, last park, Jayne. Where are we going now?
Must be Magic Kingdom, Michelle.
Oh, we've got to go on the last day.
Absolutely.
So what do you say for this one, please, Len?
So do we know where Anthony's staying?
I believe he's staying at... Oh, gosh. It's either Pop Century or All Stars.
Okay, on site.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Because if you're staying off-site, I would say the smartest thing to do is still take a ride share to the Contemporary and get dropped off because that's faster than going through Disney transportation. But since he's taking Disney transportation, he'll get dropped off in front of the park, and that's fine. So the same sort of entrance procedures happen at the Magic Kingdom. They'll open the park 15 minutes or so before official opening. Recall that before the pandemic started, the Magic Kingdom was opening an hour early on days where there weren't morning extra magic hours available. So there are no more extra magic hours for now. But Disney's not opening the park an hour in advance. It's 15 minutes or so, at least the days that I went last week, 15 or 20 minutes in advance. And that's true even if you're walking over from the Contemporary. That walkway will not be open past the security and temperature screenings until 15 or so minutes before the park is open. Once you get into the park, if you're there early enough, that would be a perfect time for photos. There are so few people in the park, especially when the park opens, that you can do your own little Disney commercial and run through the castle with no one else there. And we did actually. So my sister and I happened to be in the park one day where we were one of the first 20 people in the park, and we were walking down Main Street. I guess we were walking faster than most people, or maybe everyone went to Starbucks. But we found ourselves in front of the castle with no cast members or other people in front of us. And we quickly decided that we would film our own little Disney commercial where we run up the ramp and through the castle and look back, at our family lovingly thankfully for bringing us to Walt Disney World. So we did. It was very funny. In terms of getting on attractions, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train obviously is the thing to do there. I think a touring plan is still effective in the Magic Kingdom. we've tested it. So if you want to follow a touring plan, I would say definitely do that. There are a couple of interesting observations that we made, especially in the Magic Kingdom. One is this: at It's a Small World, the line to go on the ride now extends outside and down towards the tangled bathrooms. And the interesting thing about this is that it seems to be directly in the Florida sun from about 10 a.m. till about 4 p.m. And it's meltingly hot in that line. So if you really want to ride Small World, either do it before then or after, because you don't want to stand outside in the middle of the day for a ride like that. It can be 25 or 30 minutes long. A couple of other things we've noticed is when the parks reopened, initially, Disney's cleaning procedure for the rides was to stop the rides every 2 hours after the park had opened and clean down each ride vehicle and send it through the ride empty to wait for all of the cleaning materials to dry. So, for example, at Splash Mountain, if the park opened at 9 a.m., then at 11 a.m., they would stop admitting guests onto the ride. They would spray down and wipe down every log in Splash Mountain, and then let all the logs cycle through once through the ride to get them dry again. And the problem with that is that it basically stops the line every 2 hours. And so Disney now is doing a procedure where at any given time they're cleaning 1/2 or 1/3 of the ride vehicles, and they're letting guests on the other half or the other 2/3, depending on the ride. So instead of stopping the ride now before, for every 2 hours for 20 minutes or whatever, now they're just doing a continuous cleaning cycle, and I think that works out much better because you don't see the stops and starts in the lines. So that's one way that they've definitely adapted the cleaning procedures to make things better for the guests. The other thing that's really interesting is this: the lines are all socially distant, and at the Magic Kingdom you see it more than at other parks because they've got more lines. But for example, a 25-minute line for Pirates of the Caribbean will now stretch outside of the ride building all the way through the zigzag chains in the courtyard and then out a little bit into the actual walkway in Adventureland. That's a 25-minute line. But the interesting thing about it is this: I think it's actually psychologically, it feels like it goes faster because every time somebody ahead of you gets on the boat, instead of moving like 1 foot forward, you're moving 6 feet forward. So the scenery changes faster for you, and it feels like to me that you're making more progress even though you're waiting the same amount in line. And that's something I think I'd love to get feedback from your listeners on this, whether they think it feels shorter even though it's the same amount of time. It definitely feels better to me because the scenery is changing all the time.
Yeah, it's a bit like getting stuck in traffic, isn't it? I always say I'd rather be moving than sat in traffic and not doing anything. So I suppose It is that psychological thing of like, if you're constantly moving, you feel like you're achieving something, whereas ordinarily you just be stood waiting. So yeah, I get that actually.
Given the choice between stop and go at 2 miles an hour or continuous moving at 2 miles an hour, I'd rather continuously move. Yeah, so that's really interesting. In terms of food, I think Cinderella's Royal Table is going to open up relatively soon. I don't think that's a great value. The two big places that are open are Picos Bills and Cosmic Rays. I think they're both about the same in terms of food quality. Columbia Harbor House, my favorite place, isn't open yet. But I will say this, for the Magic Kingdom especially, and this is true for Anthony and for everyone else, make your mobile order about half an hour before you want to pick it up. Because especially he's going on a Monday, so it may not be that bad. But if you're going on a weekend, the time between you place your mobile order and the time you can pick it up can be as long as 30 minutes. So if you get really hungry and you want to maybe place that order 15 minutes ahead of time and say that you're there, and then just be prepared to walk over if it gets done faster. So allow yourself a little bit of extra time when placing that order is what I'm saying.
Top tip, because there's nothing worse than waiting in line to get food.
Oh, yeah, because you're already hungry. So
yeah, so it's like, just plan ahead a little bit more ahead of the game. What's happening with the TTA?
I think they're waiting on parts. And there's not a huge demand for it. right now. I can't wait for it to come back. It's one of my favorite rides. But yeah, it should be back. I think November now is the reopening date for it.
And it was a great ride to go on to see the update of Tron.
That's right. You can also see it now if you want to ride the Barnstormer, which in the afternoon has almost no wait. But as you walk up the entrance ramp to Barnstormer, you get a really great view of all of the construction progress and the track work at Tron now.
Oh, okay. So that's maybe something Anthony can do. The Wi-Fi's a bit dodgy in that area for doing a Facebook Live for me, but he could maybe sort of just walk up, do a little bit of videoing, and then not even bother going on the attraction.
It may be faster actually going the attraction. I think it's only 45 seconds long. maybe easier than turning around and walking back. Yeah, I don't know.
That's a very good point. Anything else you'd like to advise him with regards to the Magic Kingdom?
I would say if you want to get photos of yourself alone in the Magic Kingdom, again, show up early or wait until the last minute. The other thing I would say is for the fall, Disney's announced the holiday cavalcades now, especially for the winter holidays. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they're going to do projection technology on the castle means or seems to indicate that they're going to have to keep the park open maybe a little bit later. So the latest sunset in Orlando in December, I think, is 5:30 p.m. Right now, the park closes at 6. I don't think that 30 minutes is enough time for the skies to get completely dark so the projections can be seen on the castle, and then to actually run the show. I don't think 30 minutes is enough time to do both of those things. So I would expect that we'll see a return to 7 p.m. or hopefully later closures at the Magic Kingdom sometime in November or December. That's my hope.
I was just having a think, because I know on the show you've discussed this a little bit about, are Disney going to start charging and selling separate tickets for a Christmas party?
I don't think they're going to do it this year. They would have done some sort of modified version of Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. And frankly, I was a little surprised they didn't. They haven't announced a Christmas party, because to this point, I think they've managed the reopening really, really well. And I think they've done well enough that if they wanted to run a 2,500 or 3,000 person Very Merry Christmas event and do an upcharge for it, A, people would understand it, and B, there would be sufficient demand. Mm-hmm. Maybe they couldn't make it work with. Maybe the break-even number for them was much higher than 3, 5, or 7,000 people, and maybe that's why they couldn't get it done. But I think they've done well enough. I think they've done really well managing it. I mean, certainly I've said this on other shows. I think Disney World is actually one of the safest cities in the United States because of how well everyone complies with the mask demands and the availability of cleaning supplies and things like that. I think they've done an excellent job. If they wanted to increase the number of people in the park slightly, I'm all in favor of that. Again, I think they would be able to manage that too. So,
okay, that sounds fabulous to me. Lots of top information there. Anything else you want to tell us about, or are you just going to tell people where they can find out more information about touring plans?
I'll say most of Disney Springs is also open. Many of the restaurants are running at 25 or 50% capacity. So if you wanted to go to a really good restaurant like Boathouse or Morimoto Asia or Wine Bar George or Homecoming, you still need a reservation, and those can be made 60 days in advance. They're easier to get these days, but especially if you want to dine at a prime time, like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. on a Saturday night, you definitely want to get those reservations in advance.
Cool.
Fantastic.
That sounds good to me. Book ahead, Anthony. I know you're going to be hoping Jelly Rolls is open for you. So
I'll keep my fingers crossed. I don't think so, but yeah, here's hoping.
So give yourself a bit of a shout out on social media, Len, before we say goodbye.
So my website is touringplans.com. On social media, we are at Touring Plans, and I am Len at touringplans.com. You can also hear me on the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's disneydish.bandcamp.com.
And I would just like to add about the Disney Dish that I normally listen on my way to work, and now I'm back at work. It's great because it gives me something cheerful to listen to. Mm-hmm. The number of times I'm taking a slurp of coffee and you say something funny and I spit coffee all over my windscreen is unreal. It's so funny. You always pick something. I'm not expecting it. So I either have to go caffeine free while listening or just not listen while I'm driving to work. So, yeah, but
That's
thank you. I'm loving the show.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michelle. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Right, guys, we are going to wrap up this week's show. If you are planning a trip on to Walt Disney World, please let us know. Get in touch with us. We'd love to try and help you out as much as we possibly can. Len has done the job for you, all your planning. Get on over to Touring Plans. Bling, bling, bling on the computer. Get yourself a plan. Subscribe to them over there. It is well worth a few dollars. And there's so many things that you can actually do for free as well, which is great.
Thank you.
But until next week, it's a goodbye from me.
Bye from me.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.